Welcome back. We're back. Some lo-fi Foo Fighters for everybody. If you didn't know what that was, two fans, one poll. Myself, David Quist, and my lovely co-host KB Kirk Brown. How we doing, bud? How's Arizona? As my camera doesn't want to focus on me.
It's great, man. Enjoying the weather. It was about 82, I think, on Friday, so we are doing good overall. So enjoying it. But I'm so excited for this podcast. Hope all you listeners are ready for it. I was talking with a promo guy last night about it while we were playing
Ooh,
Xbox, and he sent me his own list. So I
ooh,
won't
throw
read that
some in
off,
there.
but I'll have to pull it up at one point
Yeah,
when we're
yeah.
talking.
Kind of
So.
curious how much we align, but I know there's some news out there with coaching and games, but we're gonna talk about that later this week in the draft, combine stuff. We'll talk about that later. We're gonna dive right in to this all-time '90s to now football team. We're gonna go back and forth, have some discussion. Can't really, have a simulation of who would be a better team, but I think it would be a hell of a game, as always in this series. Anyways, the last 50 years. But I'm gonna jump in, KB, with my. I got two coaches um, since the '90s. I gotta go with the goat. Coach D. D'Antonio. What he did to bring us up to being relevant, to taking the Michigan rivalry serious, beating Ohio State, winning Big Ten championships, winning the Rose Bowl, being in the playoff. He's gonna have a statue outside Spartan Stadium, no doubt about it. He set the foundation of Michigan State, being a top tier program in the top 20 at least, and you can't argue against that. Some things could have been better here and there, but I think he did a wonderful job. And assisting him is a young Nick Saban. Um, there was a documentary recently about him, and he said he found his process at Michigan State his last year, and I think they had a really good season. Obviously, we all know what happened with Saban after he left state. It sounds like he could have stayed, but he wasn't getting support from the athletic department, which sucks. But I think his last couple years at state were pretty successful. We all know that he's the goat. In my style, KB, I had a pro slash spread. I know it's kind of a weird hybrid, but with, we like to run the ball, so we're going to hand the ball off to our running backs with a good O line, good running backs, which we'll list later. Do some play action and get the quarterbacks nice and warm with some easy throws. But give me like a pro slash spread hybrid. Probably going to huddle up, but when the quarterback's feeling a rhythm, we'll do a little hurry up as well. In defense, 4-3, give me cover 1, cover 4, press, either one with probably Narduzzi as my DC.
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, the better pick might be Saban because of what he accomplished, but D'Antonio obviously is your most accomplished head coach since the '90s. So D'Antonio. So I get why you're taking them offense, defense. I like that. So for me, head coach is going to be Harbaugh. Obviously, you have Lloyd Carr. Really well established, and you have some early '90 years coach. But I think Harbaugh winning when he did in this timeline and in this atmosphere when he had no momentum entering the job. Carr took over, dominant team, dominant recruiting classes, team that won, 10 games, was super successful. And, Carr kind of fumbled the bag into his retirement.
He
He
did.
didn't set up Michigan well for the transition. He didn't recruit well, and it kind of put them in a really bad place. So for that reason, Harbaugh is the head coach, but definitely thinking of him, Carr, in there. For offense, I'm going to ask if I can do this, and you can say no, but I'd love if Rich Rod was my OC
I mean,
and
I,
was
I
able
would
to.
do the same thing, so that's fine.
Yeah. Rich Rod with the OC, and I think Rich Rod bringing that concept to Michigan with Harbaugh's influence of having such a more powerful run game and really putting in some gap scheme and plays, and maybe not throwing the ball around and running the QB as much would be like a net benefit. If it wasn't him, I had Al Borges. Um, there hasn't been really a long time tenured, and he kind of coached the timeline with Denard and I forget his name, Devin Gardner.
Oh, I
And
like
those
Devin Gardner.
quarterbacks are really efficient. Yep, and if they had better O lines and better recruiting, and I think that they definitely could have had really successful offenses. So one of those two, and then Minter, we're going to be running the 4-2-5. Four down linemen, two edges in there. Kind of bring in the special team, special background where you have an extra DB NFL style. You're running very sophisticated schemes, cover three with switches and all these rules, and you're doing a good job on kind of establishing everything. So, and that'd be Minter. McDonald is an easy choice too, and the only reason why he wasn't is because he was here 1 year versus Minter has been here for two, and really propelled Michigan forward after McDonald laid the groundwork.
Yeah, I didn't even pick an OC just because. I mean, our Narduzzi, easy DC, but our coordinator's were never really that good. I guess like if you had to pick one, it'd be Dave Warner, unless I'm missing something from the '90s. But I really don't know Dave Warner. And then we had who was with Tucker. He was okay because he had K9, but not really a lot of to choose from for OCs. But let's jump into quarterbacks, KB, and I'm gonna be excited
Yep.
about this one. I'll lead this one and I'll hand it over to you. But starting. We're gonna go off college careers here. So I'm
Yeah.
Connor Cook, and no doubt about it. I love Kirk Cousins as my backup, and then I got Jeff Smoker as my backup. You could throw Smoker in there to just throw fucking lasers. He's got a cannon. But the decision to do Connor Cook over Cousins is, he won the big games. He got to the Rose Bowl. I think Kirk set the foundation. He just didn't get to that threshold. So for me, Connor Cook was a better college quarterback. Obviously, the NFL is a different story where Connor Cook kind of didn't have a great opportunity, and Kirk is still doing pretty well in the league. Pretty close, 1A, 1B. And then I would have Jeff Smoker back there just because he had a cannon, five-star quarterback. He has some good stories, too, with Charles Rogers. I think I heard a story about him and Chuck driving to Iowa and playing after missing the team bus. So a lot of talent, I think, in this quarterback room. I mean, even Foles. You could even throw Foles in there, too, for honorable mention since he was a Spartan dog. But I think those three are great quarterbacks to have in the room.
Yeah, I'm surprised no Drew Stanton.
As much as I love Drew, I didn't even think about him. He's one of the reasons why I wear number 5. But when he played, I love his style. Don't get me wrong, and very athletic quarterback. But he really didn't do anything winning wise like Connor or Kirk did.
No, and that's fair. That's very interesting. Obviously, Connor and Kirk were they're your D'Antonio guys. That was the pinnacle of success. So
Yeah.
I get that, and I understand wanting those guys. But for me, so the way I formulated my list is I basically went on: Have you ever been an All American? And was able to fill out 85% of my list, 90% of my list. Like, were you a first team All American? And then backtracked and added some. So this is one of the positions. So I have two QBs, and I do want to throw an honorable mention in there. So JJ McCarthy is my starter. Obviously, the most accomplished quarterback. You have Grayback and some of those early '90s guys, but they really weren't throwers. I mean, they were less of throwers than McCarthy was. He completed 67% of his passes over his career, which was highest out of all of them. You did have some really, good guys. You have Tom Brady, but his college career wasn't anything, electric to what he turned into. And then behind him, I have my All-American Denard Robinson. I think putting him in a system, getting him 10 to 15 carries in one of these games,
Absolutely.
letting him run it, being a great dynamic runner, and then you have JJ that can kind of handle it and actually have the throwing capabilities.
Dangerous.
And also some of the running, I'd really like that. You could put them both on the field at one time and hand it off to Denard because he was capable of being a running back, especially
Yes.
after his elbow blew up. Um, but he was the first player to run and pass for 200 yards in a game twice. He is a very accomplished first team All Big Ten in 2010 and then in 2011. And then obviously his college career didn't end well, which is why he didn't go high in the draft. But he's one of my guys that absolutely love and adore Denard. But JJ is my starter just due to his accomplishments, and he is an accurate on time quarterback that can run one of those wide open concepts. So.
Would you have a third and honorable mention, Navarre or
Oh, Chad
Henne?
Henne.
Who's the guy? Was it Navarre?
Uh,
Is it Navarre? Is that how you say it before Henny?
yeah. So it was Brady or wait Grayback, Brady slash Henson,
Yep.
Navarre,
Navarre.
and then Henne.
Henny
Henne started
threw.
as a true freshman,
Henny
started all
threw
4 years.
It always was a nice little breadbasket throw.
Big time arm, but just limited athlete, and that's one of the reasons why I couldn't include him on this list.
Hmm.
He was also not very accurate. He had, through his career, he had less than a 60% win completion percentage. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is that he played as a freshman and a sophomore on an absolutely loaded team. Those are the teams that were competing with Ohio State in 04, 05, and then when he was finally had to take over the team himself when he was a junior and a senior, and Lloyd wasn't recruiting as well. The infamous App State loss is on his shoulders. Getting blown out the next week against Oregon is also on his shoulders. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want him in, being the
Fair.
two guys that I want. So
Fair. I think those are all fair. I think JJ's been the best quarterback, you always had in a while, so that makes sense. And then having Denard, he's just dangerous. We saw him a lot. He did have a lot of good numbers against MAC teams, no offense, but he did have decent games at the Big Ten. Just got to do a little shit talking as a Michigan State fan there. Can't help myself.
I mean,
Uh,
he gave Notre Dame nightmares.
he
We
did.
know that for a fact.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I never forget when Isaiah Lewis picked him off and showed him the ball when we were our first pro combats, and that was a fun time. But we'll go to running backs next. I think this could be a good one for us. I know for State. I had a list and I almost forgot some people that I love. So I'll go through them. KB. There's some guys that I never really watched, but there's some guys that we both have seen do really well, and we can go back and forth. The goat is somebody that I can't talk about. I'll talk about him next time that we had. That's a teaser for later on. But I'm gonna start. Got lots to pick from, KB. I'm gonna start Javon Ringer, and then it's probably going to be a three-headed monster. These guys are all going to get 5 to 10 touches. Langford, T.J. Duckett, Kenneth Walker. You can even throw in T.J.'s brother, Tico Duckett. And then Cedric Irvin was an honorable mention, really good in the late 90s. But, I mean, we were just really good running backs. I threw Javon Ringer out first. Just looking at my list, he's just that short guy, hit a burst, see you later, huge tree trunk legs, really good, dynamic running back. Langford, always that year we went to the Rose Bowl, every game to seal the game, he'd have a 25, 30-yard run. And he would grind out yards, 20, 30 carries a game, 100 yards. Kenneth Walker, I mean, for one season, he'll live in State. History probably could have been at the Heisman ceremony. Amazing, dynamic player. He was the reason why our offense was good. So had to throw him in there. And then you got T.J. Duckett, just a Michigan State legend. Really good NFL running back as well. Bigger bruiser guy, legend for that catch against Michigan. And then Cedric Irvin was really good in the late 90s, just had really good numbers, so I had to throw him in there as well. But State's been known for their running backs, so I had a decent list there. But we've had some really good running backs, and I didn't even say who the GOAT was back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s.
yeah, I mean, it's wild. I think both of our teams, their running back position is probably their strength.
Oh, yeah.
All in all, I love all those guys. Sad you didn't go K9 with the starter, but obviously only 1 year with the program. But I mean, he made Peyton Thorne look like a capable quarterback. That's
He did.
how him and Naylor and Reed
Oh,
and
yeah.
Coleman
Keon
made
Coleman.
made your quarterback look great. So
Yeah.
that's a wild thing. I like all those guys. Duckett is a monster, man, and you have so many guys. Ringers. I mean, I don't know how many tackles he broke, but I'd like to go back in the stats and count against Michigan how many tackles, because it was every single time he touched the ball, he was breaking three. Like, it was so consistent. He was so good. So
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure
definitely
he had
some.
like a bum ankle or something that game where he had that long breakout running against Michigan. He's kind of like galloping. I think he had
Yeah.
some kind of injury, but yeah, just all of our running backs are dudes, and can't even list them all. So I'm kind of curious to see what you got because I know Michigan's been really good lately too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that I didn't include in there. Like I said, I started. Michigan's had four first team All American running backs, and then I shaved it down to three. So my starter is Blake Corum, two-time first team All American. In 22, he was a unanimous All American.
Of
In
course.
23, he repeated it. One of the all-time goats. He scored a touchdown in 26 of his final 27 college games. And the only game he didn't score a touchdown in was the Ohio State game where he recorded two carries because he was
He's
trying to
hurt.
play through a torn ACL.
Yeah,
So
you're not gonna
I mean,
play.
just yeah. So just absolutely electric career. Obviously, all the highlights, all-time modern era touchdown leader outside of the guys like in the 1904s. All-time scoring leader for Michigan. So many accomplishments. Behind him, I have Tyrone Wheatley Jr. or Tyrone Wheatley, an electric back. In '93, he was an All-American. He was a three-time first-team All-Big Ten. Also gave you returning ability. If he found a seam and gap, I mean, he took off. He was an all-world sprinter. Competed at Michigan as a sprinter. Won. He's a Michigan native too, which is cool. And then my last back is Chris Perry. He was an '03 All-American, was the heart and soul of that team. He was a consensus Doak Walker, Jim Brown, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. So just a really accomplished career for him too. You used to have Tim Biaktabuka, or however you say his Biakba, and then there's obviously Hassan Haskins was such a large cog in that machine
Yep.
for turning it all around there. And different guys. I even thought about flirting with Donovan Edwards just to be like, hey, we can split him out as a receiver because I mean he's been great. And Michigan just has a laundry list of backs. I just took the top three. There's other All Americans. There's other guys that were all Big Ten, and they the team's so good and so loaded at running back. I had to take limit it there and take the
Don't be
list.
afraid to
So
keep doing honorable mentions because I did. Yeah, who
yeah,
was so of course Corum. I missed his second name. Sprinter.
Tyrone Wheatley.
Okay, Wheatley. Got it.
Yeah, Wheatley. Yeah, he played from '93 or '92 to '94. And he was just electric. Really, I think he had 3 seasons over 1,000 yards, which was like the first running back to do that at Michigan. Started as a freshman. Really, really just he was great. He's definitely a change of pace back with Quorum, who's more like built like a bowling ball, but he's 6 foot 235 and runs like the wind. So
Yeah, I would say Corum just did so much for you guys, and I'm kind of curious to see
yeah,
where he does as he goes to the NFL. Uh,
yeah,
Obviously, in that scheme for Michigan is really good. So I'm kind of curious. I hope he gets in a good scheme in the NFL because he's such a good running back in that system. And maybe they do
yeah,
what the Steelers did for Le'Veon Bell. They made his game that much better. I'd even say Le'Veon Bell. Holy shit!
yeah.
Reel it in, KB. I gotta throw Le'Veon Bell out there. I guess I thought I wrote him down, but I did. He's my actually number one. I'm gonna show the camera. Um,
You skipped over it
Running
accidentally.
back Le'Veon Bell is my starter. So my bad. Yeah, Le'Veon Bell's my one, and then two would be Ringer, and then three K9. Wow, didn't even talk about Le'Veon Bell. Sorry, folks. Reel that one in. Le'Veon Bell was written down as my number one. I just totally skipped over him. I showed, if you're watching the video, if you're watching the podcast on Spotify, I'll show it again. Running backs, Le'Veon Bell is number one. Okay. Segue to receivers. God, I'm glad I noticed that one.
Yeah,
But like what the
yeah.
Steelers did for Le'Veon Bell is amazing. If a team like can do that for Corum, it'd be he'd be even better.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he comes off his injury because I think through a large part of the year, I mean, he didn't get hit like early in practice and he looked a little slow. But by the time we went into the national championship game and the Rose Bowl, he looked like he got that burst back because he's not really a long speed guy, but he's definitely a guy that if he has a burst, he can set up blocks so well and, fit those holes. And obviously, he can break tackles. So,
Agree. Let's go to receivers now. I think this will be a fun one too. Some absolute legends for state that made it. Are doing really well in the NFL and did well. So first, I'm gonna do two sets of three. So I'll do both outside guys and a slot guy. Just so you know, KB. So first and foremost, my starter or X whatever, Charles Rogers, Chuck, absolute
yeah.
legend, 5-star guy out of local Michigan State, Michigan guy. I think he won the Blitnikoff, only Blitnikoff winner for Michigan State ever. And the NFL was just a sad story for him. But in college, he probably was still doing dumb stuff, but he was amazing. You can watch highlights of him. Very good receiver. Rest in peace to Chuck. Very good receiver.
Yeah.
Number two,
Yeah.
Plaxico Burress, easy pick. Another big body receiver that was very good for state. Also really good in the NFL. You can't really go wrong with those two guys. Throwing up, jump balls and fades to them, and they also were quick and could, do a fly and break tackles because they're such big bodies. And then my slot guy, easy pick here, Jaden Reed. Being 6 foot, he can catch contested balls all day. He can do punt returning for you, kick returns. He's slippery. He had a really good year with Green Bay. I think that just shows you how good he is. So him in the slot, I think, would be really sneaky good. And then three more guys. I got Matt Tranon, very underrated player in the mid-2000s. Big body guy, again, easy guy to throw up to. Then you got B.J. Cunningham, probably one of our better receivers during the Connor Cook, Kirk Cousins time, number three. A lot of big catches when we needed them. Could say Tony Lippett too, but I think B.J. was more consistent. And then my other slot guy is Blair White, another nice white boy in the slot. He was really good against Michigan when we needed him to be, and he was very sure-handed and pretty sneaky quick, as we would say. But those are my six receivers, two guys on the outside and two slot guys. All I think were solid, but I think the NFL guys really are that much better in Chuck, Plax, and Jaden Reed.
No, I love it. I think those are all good. I knew you were going to go Plax, and yeah, Chuck's story, is really sad. Actually, when you like learn more about it, he got addicted coming off surgery
Yep.
to painkillers, and that's kind of where everything started going downhill for him.
Common,
Because he
too
went
too
back
common of a
home.
story. Happens
Yeah,
a lot.
and I mean it affects everyone. It affects people all over the country. So really rip to him. Plaxico, also kind of a knucklehead. All the stories in the
Shot
NFL that we
himself.
found out about, but yeah, absolute weapon and lethal in the wide receiver game. So I like that list. Having Reed in the slot also gives you a big lineup because like
Oh
it's
yeah.
not like Reed is
Plays bigger
short.
than 6 foot.
And I mean he's thin though, so playing in the slot really gets him good matchups because he's a little bit taller than most slot receivers, but he has speed and quickness to make up for. I really like that grouping. So um, just good job.
Thank you.
Um, so for me, number one wide receiver, I kind of just did a list. Desmond Howard, obviously Heisman winner. He's 5'10", 188, so he's going to be my slot guy. Um, all world speed. Obviously, he's just so many accomplishments. I have the whole list here. Maxwell, Walter Camp, UPI Player of the Year, SN Player of the
What
Year,
year
All
was that?
American 91, unanimous
91.
91.
Okay.
Yeah, he won the Heisman in 91. I was like, oh, I wonder if he doesn't have the Blitnikoff. That's really weird. It wasn't invented yet, so Blitnikoff wasn't a thing yet, so he couldn't have won it, but he definitely would have. Because he wasn't just a receiver, he was a returner, and then they weren't throwing as much back in the early 90s. Like and he was pretty dominant. So outside of him, I have David Terrell, who played
I remember that name.
in the 2000s. So he was really good. First Michigan receiver with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in his career. He's 6'3", 212. He'll be on my outside for me. And then my other outside receiver will be Braylon Edwards,
Of course.
6'3", 214, Blitnikoff winner, unanimous All-American in '04, Big Ten most valuable player, three 1,000-yard seasons as a wide receiver. I mean, absolute dog of a human. He's so good. Obviously, opinions nowadays are like people hate him because he's a internet personality, but he's so good at Michigan and he just got everything rolling for them there. So that's basically my starters. For my kind of second unit here, there's so many middle of the road guys for Michigan that I think that sometimes they get overlooked. But number one is going to be Ty Streets. This is a guy who had a 4.3 speed. He broke one of the earlier people that broke a 4.4 like back in the combine days. He had 144 receptions for 2,000 yards and 19 TDs at his time at Michigan. He's 6'3" too, so he'll be an outside guy that if you really want to draw up a big play action pass shot play, give him that opportunity. This will be my returner and my receiver, Stevie Breston. He's my other slot guy. He's 6', 189. If you just want to take time out of your day and watch the Michigan versus Texas Rose Bowl,
Okay.
in I think '04 or yeah, I think it was '04, and he had 4 or 5 returns against Texas where he's returning it to like midfield and setting up short in a punt return. He was so incredibly good at doing all that stuff. So shout out to him. I just really like what he brings to this offense. And then a guy that I think if he would have played his senior year, it got shortened and ended due to COVID. Nico Collins. He wasn't used correctly in Michigan. We're seeing like what could have been on the Texans, but he hired an agent and couldn't play in 2020 season because of it. But he's just a huge 6'4", all of it. Big body jump ball masterclass, and you could have him at times. You could have 3 guys that are all 6'4" plus in the receiver room, running out, trotting out on the field. So I just really like his makeup and everything that's kind of about him. So I wanted to give him a shout out.
Absolutely. I would agree with all those. Um, Edwards, I remember him. No, Mario Manningham, that's a name that comes to my head when I think of Michigan. Obviously, as a state fan, I'm not as familiar as you are, KB. That's just a name that kind of pops in my head.
Yeah, Mario definitely has the better stats and the better career than like Nico Collins or Stevie Breston. But when I was building this team, it's not just like, oh, I want to get the guys that like accomplish the most. Outside of all Americans, obviously, I wanted to put together guys that would then complement and fill pieces. and so like Stevie Breston and
Okay.
and Nico Collins kind of do that for me. But there's plenty of players that had really tremendous. Junior Hemingway was a guy I really wanted to, but I think he was more of a product of the offensive system. I mean,
Yeah.
he was,
I have an honorable
and
mention for
Roy
State.
Roundtree. Those guys
I
weren't
remember Roundtree. I got an honorable mention
high
for
end
State too.
athletes.
Keyshawn Martin. Guy was an absolute
Yeah.
nightmare for anybody if you punted, punt return, kick return to him, and he's really good in the slot. Didn't have the best hands though, so that kind of hurt him. But Keyshawn Martin was huge in the special teams game. But the next one we're gonna jump to, KB, is O line, and I wasn't too sure about this for me. I did a little bit of by year. I State said okay lineman here and there like Jack Conklin, here and there. So I just did years. I don't know if you went into more detail. That's fine. I'll just do 2015 as one. That's with Jack Conklin. He got drafted. He's one of the main pillars on that offense. 2012 was a Rose Bowl year, so I decided to throw them out there because we had a good, successful season. And then 1998, I can't remember the guy's name, but we had a first-round pick, so I decided to throw those three out there. And just for me, having a draft pick like Conklin's big, and then I think that was a CFP year, and then 2012 was the Rose Bowl. Not any big names, nothing crazy. I think we had a Allen who played center for the Rams later on. But just a good cohesive line that did their job, blocked well for the running game, and gave the quarterbacks some time. So that's what I did.
Gotcha. Yeah, I went individual players.
Go ahead. That's fine.
And I'll talk about them in a second, but I do like your idea of just doing like line units. I think Michigan probably 2021 was their best O line. They were just absolute maulers. Like no one could stop them in the run game really. In pass protection, they were really good. That was a Cade McNamara year, but they had great tackles, great guys. But yeah, I went through and did the same thing. All Americans per position, and kind of whittled it down from there. So my offensive tackle, Michigan has actually had three two-time All-Americans at left tackle that have been, All-Americans back-to-back years, which is wild. So I wanted to mention all three of them. Greg Skrapanik was the first-team All-American in 90 and 91, Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, two-time All-Big Ten. He was 6'7", 316 unit. Jake Long, consensus All-American in 06 and 07, first-team All-Big Ten, Big Ten of the year. And then in 04, he got injured 05, or he could have possibly been a three-time first team, so he didn't play in all of 05. But 04, he was second team All Big Ten, kind of growing up to his All-American season. And then the last guy is Taylor Lewan, two-time first team All-American, 12 and 13. Three-time first team All Big Ten, 11, 12, and 13. Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, freshman All-American, second team.
Very good
so
podcast.
This man was very good
Couldn't beat
podcast.
Michigan
Obviously,
State.
a lot of I was gonna say that if I had to choose, probably I wouldn't choose Taylor. The reason being is obviously there's a ton of stuff that allegedly happened that he allegedly did. That stories have came out about his time at Michigan, which he's not guilty, but it's just a distraction, I guess I could say. And then also he was the least accomplished guy. He played in an era that was miserable for Michigan football, where he was the only good guy blocking, and no one else could block on those offensive lines, and they got quarterbacks killed. So that's the reason why I didn't choose them. But we'll then move. Michigan had two guards, so it works out perfectly. Steve Hutchinson, he was a unanimous All-American in 2000. He was an All-American in 99, so two-time Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year in 2000. He was a four-time All-Big Ten selection, so he was definitely my first guard. And then Zach Zinter, recent guy, 6'6", 322, but unanimous All-American this year, two-time first-team All-Big Ten, and he was a second-team All-Big Ten in 21. Illustrious career at Michigan, probably one of the winningest offensive linemen, him and Trevor Keegan, which shout out to Trevor Keegan, who's a guard. A little less, Keegan wasn't a great pass protector, which is the reason why, he probably wasn't an All-American, but really good still nonetheless. But Zinter broke his leg in his last game against Ohio State. So
bummer.
Feeling for him, yeah, it sucks. But I just want to shout out to Zach Zinter and everything that he accomplished at Michigan. And for the last is going to be center. Michigan had three All-Americans at center. So you have David Molk, He was a consensus All-American, Remington Award winner, Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year, two-time first team All-American or first team All Big Ten. David Bass, consensus All-American in '04, Remington '04, three-time first team All Big Ten in '02, '03, '04, Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year in '04. Olu Oluwatimi in the
What a name.
21 season, consensus All American, Outland Trophy, Remington, first team All Big Ten in 22, second team All American in 21, second team All ACC in 21. Obviously, was only at Michigan for a year. I'm starting him. And the reason being is because we need a brother on the O line room. Like, a lot of whites out there. Those guys can be backups, but don't want to have a jokingly. And he was a consensus All American, just like these guys were. But he was just I liked his impact on the year, and I feel like he came into difficult situation, into a brand new scheme, transferring, and to come in and start after playing at Virginia of all places, like you have to be in it's just a completely different world, and he was able to answer the bell. And I feel like if he'd started there, like generated a career, he would have been one of those 3 or 4 time All Big Ten selections because he was growing his game so consistently.
Yeah, great. I don't know too much KB as you do, but I would have. You did All American stuff. I didn't even do that. I don't know how many All American State has had, so I can't argue. Um, I think Michigan's O line would be a problem in this game and might be your biggest advantage for sure.
Yeah, Michigan's had some great O lines. I think State has too, but you don't think of O linemen individually, um, unless you know them, right? So like
Oh,
I know obviously these groups, but I think you had some really great groups, and you could have put together. I know you guys had All American O linemen. Who's that huge guy that was like number one overall? Wasn't he an O lineman?
oh, that was like the '70s.
Oh, was it? Was it that long ago?
MSU best O lineman. I think so.
Oh,
Um,
I thought it was more recent, but
I could look it up quick.
he was a guy that like did the steroids.
Yeah,
Or was he a
Minerv
D
is it
lineman?
Minerovich or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Let me look at his year here. Brian Allen, da, 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 da. Tony Menderich,
Yeah.
1987.
Oh,
He
okay.
was a
That makes
bust too,
sense.
so I didn't include
Yeah,
him.
Manarich.
But I mean, Jack Conklin's on here, and so is Brian Allen. Flozell Adams was the other guy I was talking about that got drafted. And then
Yeah.
there's some older guys. But let's go to tight ends. I
Yes.
got two. Chris Baker, I just looked him up. He played in the late 90s, early 2000s. Nothing crazy number wise, but just a solid tight end. Um, I don't know a lot about him, but he was just good. I think he played in the NFL too. He got drafted in the third round by the Jets, so decent. Tight end, nothing crazy. And then somebody that I saw play, Josiah Price, he was really good for State in that scheme when we had D'Antonio and Connor Cook. I can always remember him shooting like a gun when we were playing Oregon at home. It was pretty electric, like we're playing duck hunt. He was just a solid tight end, decent run blocker. Caught a lot of big passes in the red zone, and not the most attractive guy, but he got it done, and just a vibes guy. He had good celebrations, and him and Connor Cook were always on the same page. So easy 1A, 1B. You could even start Josiah Price, but Chris Baker was the NFL draft, so I'll put him one, and then Price second.
No, I love it. Yeah. I remember Price a lot. Michigan, like obviously in their down years and stuff, but like he was just like always a guy that like always killed Michigan with like a big catch. It was wild how he always did that. But my Michigan's tight ends. So number one is Jake Butt.
Of
He
course.
was a consensus All American in 16. He was an All American in 15, so two-time All American. John Mackey Award, Ozzie Newsome Award, two-time first team All Big Ten. Like if he didn't have his knee blow up for a second time against
Yeah.
Florida State, he's probably second or third round draft pick and probably has a hell of a career, but he never got healthy. One of those players that the what if because he had one ACL going into his senior year that he tore. Then that was his second one, and then while coming back from his injury after his rookie year, he tore his ACL again in Denver. So it was just string of bad luck, string of his knees, but he was 6'6", 249, huge. Jeremy Tooman was an All-American in 97. Definitely would be a little bit more of a run blocker and then, could leak up field, but he was a big boy, 6'4", 245 on that frame is, you're bigger than most linebackers that are coming at you. So, and then my last tight end, and Colston Loveland will probably be on this list by the end of next year. He just hasn't accomplished enough because I think he could be a first round draft pick next year. Really love what he does, but he isn't a great blocker, and he's a pretty good athlete. But I want to see one more year of production. But I thought about this guy, and I honestly had completely forgotten about him. But Devin Funches,
He was out.
he transitioned to a wide receiver his final year, but he was a two-time second-team All-American. He won the tight end of the year in 13 in the Big Ten. But I think splitting him out in a Y alignment, again, gives you this lineup where you could have Nico Collins, Braylon Edwards, Ty Streets, Devin Funches, and Jake Butt. That's a lot of height to cover.
Oh, yeah.
A whole lot of tall people, and so I really like having him. Obviously not the best blocker, which is why he transitioned to receiver, but I just really like his size, frame, and athleticism. That really gives him, the ability to kind of do all of that stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Let's jump to defense. You good with that? Anything else you want to say on offense?
I do want to break down who I think State's offensive strength would definitely be its receivers. I could even see them only running like one tight end sets, outside of having to block because your receivers are significantly better than your tight ends.
Yes, absolutely.
And obviously your running backs are great. You could pick between 12 different guys that are all great running backs.
Yep.
For you, but I just wanted to bring that up. I think that was one of the strengths of your
strength would be your line, and then your height, like you just said, with receivers. And I think you could obviously run with any of the running backs with that line, have all that height with the receivers and the tight ends. It'd be a fun matchup with our corners that we have.
Yeah. The cornerback is where we're gonna have a good time talking about cornerbacks in a little bit. But
I only have two listed.
Absolutely,
but yeah, they're dogs. But
there
TBs.
you go.
Let's go to D end here. There's some guys that I'm familiar with and some guys that I'm not that are from the 90s. Robert Smith was good in 98. Julian Peterson, well-known name. He was really good in 99 in the late 90s. He's a solid NFL rusher as well. And then people that I'm really familiar with that I kind of have behind those two guys because those guys have better stats. Shalik Calhoun was a monster in the 2012, 2013 with that gladiator-looking face mask. He was really good. And then a little bit during his time before him, I think we had Marcus Rush. If you're not a State guy, you probably don't know who Marcus Rush was, but he was a huge white guy, pretty athletic for being a bigger guy, and made lots of plays. So shout out to him. If I'm wrong in his position, I'm pretty sure he played end, but he might have been a hybrid with linebacker. But Marcus Rush was really good.
What a great last name, by the way,
yes,
for
Marcus Rush.
We're rusher and edge rusher.
He played in the NFL for a little bit. He was really good for us at State. And then honorable mention, local guy Kenny Willekes, absolute dog when he got his chance to play. I think he's getting signed by the Detroit Panthers or Michigan Panthers as well. So looking forward to seeing what he can do there. But he was really good at State, really good at getting pressure, just a high motor guy. And he got a lot done. He played at North Point Christian here in Grand Rapids, small Christian school, and he earned his spot at State and had some crazy good games. He got hurt, unfortunately, in a bowl game, I think against Oregon in the Redbox Bowl, but besides that, he was really good for us, phenomenal guy, just high energy, high output, getting to the quarterback a lot, so I had to bring him up as well.
He was a little undersized, right?
Yeah.
And he just came off that edge and he got so low. I remember he would sack Michigan and no one would even touch him. They wouldn't get their hands on him. He was really, really good. But I like your edge rushing group. I like mine slightly better, but
of course.
I'm just kidding. But my edge rushers, Aiden Hutchinson, obviously.
Of course.
For unanimous All-American in 21, first team All-Big Ten in 21, finished second in the Heisman, a few other trophies. I think his career was kind of put on a shallow. He had a pretty good true sophomore season. I think he had 5.5 sacks. And he played defensive interior almost a lot because we remember back in the day with Don Brown, he hated guys who were bigger than 280 in the center, and that's why Michigan got gashed in the running game by the end of his tenure. But he was got injured his junior year, which was the COVID season, and then he came back an absolute monster.
Very good.
Broke the Michigan sack record for a single season. Very accomplished guy, so shout out to him. Um, Outside of that, I have Brandon Graham, first team All American in '09, Big Ten Most Valuable Player '09, first team All Big Ten in '09. He was just a unit, still is a unit. He's an old guy now in the league, but I remember watching him, and he was one of the highlights of those seasons um, post Carr. He was like the only defensive player that really did anything special, and he was doing that on an unskilled defense where there wasn't really anyone else to worry about. So really impressed with him. Outside of that, we have Chris Hutchinson, who's Aiden's father, which is a fun fact. They're going to have the father-son duo coming off the edge.
Love that.
First team All-American in 92, Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year 92, first team All-Big Ten in 92 and 91. He played defensive interior back in the day, but he weighed 260 or he weighed 249, which just like isn't possible to do anymore. So he'll be out on the edge for me. And then the last one, this guy was a hybrid outside linebacker, edge guy back in the day. So he'd come down, rush the passer, and sometimes drop in coverage. Lamar Woodley, he was a unanimous first team All-American in '06, Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year '06, Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year '06, and first team All Big Ten in '06. He was great. He had I think that year he had like 22 and a half tackles for loss. Absolutely wild. But yeah, that's my starting group there. A lot of size, a lot of length, some speed guys, a lot of change of pace there. So
I like it. Both Hutches. I mean, obviously, Aiden had a huge senior his last year, and obviously he's high pick of the draft. I get that. Love seeing his dad in there, and the other guy's name. I remember him, popping up a lot. So good little, good one there, KB.
And if I had to give a shout out, Chase Winovich. He played high energy guy.
Kind of like
Absolutely motored around the edge, long hair. Really embraced the revenge tour and was kind of cringy at times, but he was really really good for a college level player.
Yep. Let's jump into interior lineman D tackles. I got 3 here. Domata Peko, he's a legend, huge hair, bigger guy, really good for the Bengals too. I think for a while he's early. He's an '05 solid D tackle, and then guys that we're both gonna know. KB Jarrell Worthy, big guy in playing D tackle. He had some big field goal blocks. I think you could see his gut hanging out, and he had that big eye black, and that was when our defense was really good and scary in the early 2010s. So Jarrell Worthy, easy pick. And then a guy that's got another sad story in the NFL is Malik McDowell, really good, highly touted. D tackle, I think 4 or 5 star guy. He made a difference when he got put in games. He was really good, for a couple years, and then he left early. And then, tragic being stupid on his part, got into an accident, and I don't think he's ever played a snap in the NFL for the Seahawks, but really good when he was at State in the late, 2010. So those are my 3 guys. There's probably other guys you could throw in there, but easy 3 names to throw out there. Jarrell Worthy would probably be my number 1, but Peko was just really good. He's good in the NFL too, and he's got a great look with his hair, so you could easily have those guys rotating in and out, no problem.
No, I like that list absolutely. I think those last 2 guys you mentioned, I mean, they still cause me nightmares when thinking about Michigan playing against them, because those were the years where Michigan had all the negative rushing yard stats and couldn't do anything offensively because those guys just made it not a fun time trying to run the ball, I mean, I think they were good run defenders, but I feel like they were excellent pass rushers where they would just push the middle of the pocket in, like you couldn't step up into the pocket, and that let those edge rushers look even better too. So, oh god, getting PTSD flashbacks over that. But, elite group there. So for me, I have 4 guys listed here. Alan Branch, first team All American in '06. He's 6'6", 331. Absolute mammoth of a man. Didn't put up great stats. 56 career tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. But when you get an All-American with those career stats, that means that you are causing havoc. And that means that, you're doing the things that might not show up on playbooks, causing throwaways and stuff like that. So he was really great. The next guy, he's a little bit smaller. Mo Hurst, 6'2", 280. He's part of that, lineman group that Michigan started rolling out that were smaller. He had such a fast first step. I feel like branching him off with a guy that's 330 that's going to eat double teams and get him a one-on-one with a center or guard is going to be great. He's a consensus All-American in 17. Mason Graham, who's currently on the team, he's a second team All-American this year, first freshman All-American, first team All Big Ten. He's really good, and I think he's only going to get better. And he's a 6'3", 318, so he's another 300-pounder to kind of throw on that line. So you could have two 300-pounders, causing mess, or you can kind of go with a lighter group. And then my last guy might be a little bit of a shocker, but I think this guy was dealt such a shitty hand when he came to Michigan. And, I mean, we're watching it every single day in the NFL. Rashawn Gary, and he played not a ton of defensive interior, but he did go in there for at least a handful of snaps every game. He's 6'5", 277. So he was a big guy in college, and I think he's even slimmed down to fill up the outside linebacker role. He could have been, I think he was closer to like 290 in college, 285 plus. But he was literally asked to not rush the pass rusher. Like, they wanted Chase Winovich to be the guy that won all the time, and Rashawn Gary was told, hey, anchor the edge, so that way if he ever escapes, you can go after him. And seeing what he is in the NFL, he was that skillful of a player. He was that quick and fast, and they just never let him do that. If he was in this 4-2-5 in a stand-up stance or throwing inside where he's got a one-on-one with a guard, I mean, that's problems, all over the place. So that's kind of why I threw him in there, just because I think he had a shitty time, at Michigan, what they asked. And he also played his last year as a true junior going through injury when he had like 9.5 sacks as a sophomore, and he had a really bad shoulder injury that limited basically everything that he could do. So
yeah,
shout out to Rashawn Gary. I think he, maybe didn't live up to expectations, but definitely someone that had the skill to be great. It just what the team asked wasn't really allowing him to do that.
Yeah, all solid for sure, KB. I think we both have good interior D line. I think there's probably a lot of guys that we don't even think of either that were just kind of always there, and they did a solid job as well that neither of us probably thought of. But let's jump to linebackers. A squad that I really really like for State here. Max Bulla, really good. Middle linebacker, very good. Made a lot of plays. Didn't play in the Rose Bowl, but was huge for that team. Greg Jones was a little bit before him, 2009. Greg Jones was a beast, flying all over the place. Bigger linebacker, super athletic, lots of tackles. Played, I think he won a Super Bowl with the Giants. He was all over the place for State, really good, and a great name. Greg Jones. After Max Bulla, we had Joe Bocci, who's also in the NFL. Bocci's going to marry his sister, fun fact, and I think they're also pregnant, so congrats to them. But Joe Bocci was also super athletic, really smart linebacker, all over the place, made plays, made interceptions against Michigan. He made a pick against Utah State. He tipped it and caught it to beat Utah State. That was a scary game. He's a really good, super smart, super athletic linebacker that made stuff happen for some pretty good defenses. And then my honorable mention, who is really, really good when we need him to be, super athletic guy, D'Antonio guy, Danico Allen. He made that tackle against Braxton Miller in the Big Ten Championship to seal the deal to win the game, and he was just really good in a lot of other aspects of that season. And the season before that, when we had really good linebacker play with him and Max Bulla and some other guys. But those are my four that I had to bring up. All really good. All could start. All could rotate in. All could be leaders on that defense, no problem. So, except for Max Bulla being dumb and getting kicked out the team or not playing on the Rose Bowl. But besides that, everybody is damn good linebackers.
No, I agree. I think your linebacking unit is definitely your strength. Your front seven was always really good, especially through the D'Antonio era. So not surprised there. So for me, it's a little bit of a weird amalgamation of people. So the first person is Devin Bush. He was a consensus All-American in 18, certified state hater. So proud of that for this. Obviously, with what he did with the logo, it's still talked about every single time the rivalry game is. State guys are like, he should have been charged because that's destruction of property, and Michigan fans are like, I wish you would have taken a piss on it. And so it's just a fun part of the rivalry that is going to live with us forever. But he's a two-time first-team All-Big Ten, second-team All-American, Big Ten linebacker of the year, really well accomplished, solid guy. He had unbelievable speed and burst. You weren't getting outside on him, consistently. He got injured in his last game at Ohio State. against Ohio State, I should say, was unable to play in the bowl game and then tore his ACL after his rookie year in Pittsburgh, and his pro career hasn't really taken off in the way that maybe you had hoped.
Yep.
But he was always a really fun player. Jabril Peppers. So this is a little controversial because he's 5'11", 217. But he won the Big Ten Linebacker of the Year award. He was considered a linebacker in college.
Okay.
So I have him in my linebacking group. Obviously, he'd probably play a safety position, but as a roster spot, I couldn't put him anywhere else, and also mentioned that he was Big Ten Linebacker of the Year.
Yeah.
So that's part of it, but he was really great. I know State fans think that he was a little overrated, and I agree. He probably shouldn't have been invited to the Heisman ceremony, but he did so much for Michigan. He was all over the field. He played a ton of different positions. He was able to cover. He was able to blow up blocks. He was strong as hell, fast, athletic, really, really good punt returner. So he just did basically so many things for Michigan I needed to talk about. So then I have two other linebackers. These guys were, earlier on, 90s, but Jarrett Irons, he was a consensus All-American in 96, but in his career, he had 453 tackles.
That's a lot.
He averaged over 100 tackles a year.
Yep.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild. I couldn't leave him off the list. And then Larry Foote, he had 212, but he's a first-team All-American in 01, two-time first-team All-Big Ten in 2000 and 2001 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. So he was really good. He had finished his career with 53 tackles for loss in 3 seasons.
Nice.
So he was part of the great Michigan linebacking core that was kind of always around in the early 2000s.
Nice, love that. Yeah, all names that I know, except for the last two guys, but those stats don't lie. So I love that, KB. Good stuff. I'm gonna do DBs as a unit. I'll say corners and safeties, but I only have 4 guys listed just because they're that good. I probably could do more guys, but these are just big names that we're all gonna know here. So corner 1 and 2, Darqueze Dennard, Trey Waynes, both guys probably were all Americans. Probably, they were both high draft picks. I don't think Dennard had that good of a NFL career, but Trey Waynes was solid in the NFL. Both are shutdown guys in that Narduzzi system. Both guys had huge interceptions, made huge plays when you needed them to, and they're just really good. They're part of that no-fly zone defense. Then on safety, I got Curtis Drummond. He had some crazy good plays, one-handed picks against Western, and I think they did in that same game. He had like a lateral where he lateraled it or he scored. Dynamic player. He's part of that no-fly zone as well. And then one more guy that was part of that was Isaiah Lewis. Hurts that he ran to the punter against Wisconsin in the first Big Ten championship game, but besides that, he was really good, made plays, head hunter, hard hitter. Loved watching Isaiah Lewis. There's some other guys out there, Demetrius Cox I could bring up, and say a couple other corners, but these 4 guys were standouts to me and had to be named.
No, I love it. Yeah. So were those all, you said those were all guys part of the no-fly zone group?
I'm pretty sure Isaiah
were-
Lewis might have been a little early, but Dennard, Waynes, and I'm pretty sure Drummond were all between 12 and 14.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was an elite group. I mean, when you had those guys, they opened up your pass rush because you could just blitz every down, and it didn't matter because you guys just won so much defensively on the outside that it opened up the game so much for you guys. It was really impressive. And it was that Narduzzi just attack, D'Antonio, all that influence. It was really, really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I have too many DBs that were all Americans, and I want to make sure I list all of them. But obviously, one, Charles Woodson,
Of course.
one of the all-time best defensive backs. He could play safety as he transitioned to in the NFL, but he was a lockdown corner. He had 16 INTs and 30 passes defended.
That interception
while
he
he's in
had
college.
was that against State?
Yeah, State, the
All-time
one-handed, yeah.
He was throwing that ball away.
All-time.
I'm 95% sure about that one.
Yeah, but Woodson was
play.
just that good of an athlete. But he was a unanimous All-American in '97, won the Heisman Trophy, Walter Camp Award, Chuck Benardic Award, Jim Thorpe Award, Bronco Nagurski Trophy, Jack Tatum Trophy, Player of the Year for SN, Big Ten Player of the Year, and he was also a first-team All-American in '96. So just unbelievable career. Obviously, one of the best in the NFL career too. But he made life hell and was really good in the rivalry games, which was always really important. Outside of him, Ty Law was the first-team All-American in '94, two-time first team. He had 8 INTs, 19 passes defended. He's 6 foot, 201. We could throw him on the outside, inside. There's a lot we could kind of do there. Then we had Marlon Jackson. He was a consensus All American in '04. He was 6 foot, 196. I mean, all these guys were part of elite DB groups that Michigan was rolling out all through the early '90s into the early parts of the 2000s, where guys were just monsters year after year, and you really couldn't throw it on them. Um, The next guy I'm going to mention was part of really good Michigan offensive back, and it's Jordan Lewis. He would be my slot guy. It's the position he transferred to in the NFL just because of his size. He's 5'10", 195. But he had the infamous one-handed interception against Wisconsin. That was unbelievable to seal that game. But he was a two-time first-team All-American, two-time first-team All-Big Ten player in both 15 and 16. He was absolutely phenomenal. So he would definitely be my number one slot guy. I also think he, was big enough and he tackled well enough in college to stuff his nose in the run game a lot. And then the two guys were both All-Americans this year. Will Johnson, I might throw him outside because he's 6'2", 202. He has a frame. I mean, he missed 3 games this year and still was an All-American first team, which is just what he did. He was a first-team All-American 2023, and he was a defensive freshman of the year. And then Mike Sainristil, I have to mention that guy. He became an All-American. If he would have possibly started his career as a defensive back, Michigan, when he first came there, I mean, he played receiver for 3 years, was pretty damn good at receiver. It was just kind of limited by the people who were throwing the ball, but absolutely electric. And then so those are all my cornerbacks that were all All-Americans. And then for safety, Ernest Shazier, he was 6'4", 231 as a safety, just impressive size. He had 166 tackles out of his safety position in his career, consensus All-American in '04. And then my other safety, he transitioned this position in the NFL. Leon Hall, he was a consensus All-American in '06, first team All-Big Ten, 180 tackles in his careers. These guys were more than willing to step up in the run game and tackle. And it's going to be a great, battle between our DB room and your DB room. We have great receivers, but it's going to be hell to get open if they had to play this game. Yeah,
and especially with the no-fly zone when we lost to Notre Dame, if we could get away with those tiki-taki PI calls, I think it matters how they play how they call that game if this game actually happens, because we literally lost to Notre Dame because they called like 4 tiki-taki PIs on Trey Waynes that led to our only loss.
Yeah,
but
the clear and evident ones.
Yeah, right, KB. But I think that'd be a fun matchup against both receiving crews or cores. But I'm going to do quarterback or kickers and punters quick together. We're almost done here. We're almost up on an hour, so just wanted to get it wrapped up. My kickers, Brett Swenson. You could throw in Coughlin and a couple other guys. Can't remember the guy who did the wheel when we beat Ohio State, but he was Michael Geiger. That's a big name too. But yeah. Swenson had the best. I think he had like 70 or 75% makes. And we're kind of punter university here. Rest in peace, Mike Sadler, local guy, Forest Hills Northern guy, tragically died. But really good punter. We had Bryce Behringer as well a couple years ago, really good punter. Or that was last year. He was a walk-on, transferred from Illinois, now on the Patriots. Then we had Jake Hartbarger, who just had an absolute rocket on his right foot, or it might have been a lefty. But just 3 guys that are all really good. All could have been NFL talents, which I'm pretty sure Hartbarger and Bryce Behringer were. And Sadler was really good at state. Just a sad story. He unfortunately, died in a car accident with I think a guy from Nebraska, Fultz. So 3 good punters, all NFL talent, and 2 of them are in the league / were in the league. So I know I looked at a list. We have another guy that's a really good punter and kicker, but these are the guys that we know that are right now. But I just got to bring up Sadler. It's a sad story. My wife coaches at Northern, so I always see his name and whatnot. So just really good punter. But that's all I got.
No, absolutely, yeah. No, it feels like we just started talking about this list, and it's wild. We're already at an hour.
Yeah.
Coming up, but there's so many good players for both of these universities. So for kicker, Jake Moody is my number 1 kicker. I wasn't thinking of anyone else. I wasn't looking at anyone else. Quinn Nordin was pretty good at his time, but an 82% career. He was a Lou Groza Award winner in 21, back in Anderson Kicker of the Year in the Big Ten 21 and 22, consensus All-American 21, second team All-American in 22, 2-time first team All-Big Ten. And you're like, oh my God, why? Like, he kind of seems like he fell off. Michigan attempted 50-yarders that no one else in the country would try. So it hurt his percentage, but he didn't miss an extra point while he was at Michigan. He was 148 for 148, and he has a record 59-yard field goal at Michigan. So like he was kicking field goals that other people didn't even try, and so it did hurt him a little bit. But he was unbelievable kicker while he was here. And then for punter, I did this, and I did want to kind of give a shout out to two other guys, but Will Hagerup would be my punter. He won the 2012 Edelman Fields Punter of the Year for the Big Ten. No one else has won that award. There've maybe been some second team or whatever All Americans, but Will Hagerup. But I want to keep our eyes on, or talk about one guy and keep our eyes on another. Brad Robbins, he was just drafted last year. He was a great punter. He actually forced Michigan had a punter that was a second team All American, but he out competed him and beat him. He ended up transferring somewhere else, and he's really good. But Brad Robbins was great for Michigan, but I don't think he was asked to punt a whole lot, and he didn't really pin guys deep inside the 20. But Tommy Doman, he had 7 to 8 punts last year that were incredible, that I was like, oh my God, this guy might be the best punter. He has the highest punting average for punts on the in his career so far after 1 year of punting, and he also is the kicker off the tee, and he boots it through the back of the end zone every single time. So shout out to all of them. I love everyone on this team. I was kind of surprised we have a lot of people that recently graduated,
Yes.
On this team that we put, and that just goes to show, Michigan went through a lull there where they did have some All-Americans, but they didn't really have a ton of great players or a lot of winning. But Michigan's winning a shit ton of games recently, and so I was able to include a lot of those newer guys, at a bunch of different positions.
Yeah, I think for us it was like late 90s, and then the 2010s is when most of our guys were that I listed for sure, because that's when we were good. That's when we won Rose Bowl and playoffs, and the Big Ten a couple times. So I love the list, KB. I'd love to, if I had some kind of algorithm or program, would love to plug these teams in and have them play 100 times to see what the record would be. But I don't know if that's out there. But if anybody wants to make that up, I'd love to make some crazy all-time games with algorithms and programs. But I love this conversation, KB. I'm gonna listen back to this one and just think about the guys that I can't believe I forgot, like maybe some D tackles. Le'Veon Bell, I can't believe I didn't say his name, but I did write him down number one. But I love this, KB. I'm looking forward to doing our older list, which will be a little bit more probably us looking into players. Obviously, there's some legends from both sides. Everybody knows their names, but there's some also guys that we don't really know about that did a lot for each program. So looking forward to listening back to this. I got nothing else to say except for thanks everybody listening. Good amount of listens last time, so thanks as always, and go green.
Go blue.
Thanks, guys. We should be back probably this week. If not, we'll be back next Sunday, Monday. Thanks so much.